Good afternoon. My name is Doug Holder, and I'm here with my guest, Sebastian Lockwood. And Sebastian, welcome, Sebastian.
Thank you, Doug. I appreciate
Sebastian is a storyteller who specializes in the epics. And the Epic of Gilgamesh, Homer's Odyssey, Caesar, The Man from Venice, Beowulf, Monkey, A Journey to the West. These are the great tales of heroic struggle and self-discovery. And he has you can purchase audio books at audible.com and amazon.com.
Yep.
Okay.
Just put my name into Amazon.
And he's worked as a traveling bard, teacher, and audiobook narrator. Lockwood lives with his wife, singer and producer Nanette Perrault, by Crotched Mountain, New Hampshire. And Nanette's here in the studio, but she's just an observer, by her own choice. So I was going to ask you, you were first introduced to the Epic of Gilgamesh in Elizabeth Barker's class at Boston University, and I've heard so much about her over the years, about her prison program she started. Perhaps you could just give us a bit of the atmosphere there.
Sure. Well, that was when I first arrived, and I had come back from England, and at the time I had not finished high school for various reasons, and so I couldn't get into colleges except for Boston University, and they said...
It wasn't a great school back then.
No, but
I was there.
But what they did, which was very kind, was they said, go to our night school, Metropolitan College, and if you do well at the end of the year, we'll put you into our day school. And I loved Metropolitan College because we all worked during the day, and then I was driving for Red Cab, Brookline Village, driving what we called iron cabs. They didn't have power steering. And so I would drop my young baby off with a babysitter in the morning in the back of the cab I'd picked up, drive all day in Boston, and then at night at 7 o'clock turn up for a 3-hour lecture with about 50 people, and we were all there to learn. And Ma Barker was there to teach, and she would come striding in with her husband in tow, with her thermos of black coffee and pack of cigarettes, and just start lecturing. And it was in those lectures, she was lecturing around epic and early ancient history, and she taught us about the Epic of Gilgamesh. And the subsequent semester in the day school, I would take a course on epics with Professor Charles Bai, who was a great classicist, and he literally had not heard of Gilgamesh. So that was how new Gilgamesh was to the academic world, even in the 70s. You know, it was the first public translations that were really popular came out probably in the late 60s, early 70s. Actually, who was a woman out of BU did that early prose translation. And so into that world of classics and epics started to come this enormous icebreaker of a poem pushing its way in, and everyone who had used Homer's Odyssey as the first epic had to make room for this enormous new arrival and try and figure out what this poem meant, how to deal with it, how it resonated with the other poems we knew. And so that was immensely exciting.
Now, for people who are not familiar with it, if you can give sort of a Monarch version notes quickly of what the basic plot line is of Epic of Gilgamesh.
Sure. So if you imagine that the archaeologists at the time had thousands of these stone tablets, and they had to, of course, break the code so they could start reading it. And we have code breakers in Chicago and in London, both working on it. They break through the code, they start reading these tablets, and most of the tablets are about stuff of empire, and then all of a sudden, one scholar sitting in the London Museum finds a tablet that starts Gilgamesh, King of Kings.
All right.
Look at this foundation, is it not beautiful? And it goes into that beautiful opening coda where we're told of this great king who is the King of Kings, and that he is that much mightier than anybody, and he's using up the young men of the town and using up the women taking droit de seigneur when they get married. And he's too much for everyone, so the people go to the gods and beg.
Aru, was it?
Aruru.
Aruru, sorry.
And they beg her to make someone to be an equal to Gilgamesh. So she does what any goddess does who needs to make someone. Takes a scoop of clay, spits in it, And Enkidu's born in the wild grasslands, and he runs with the gazelles. And there's these beautiful descriptions of the wild Enkidu running and talking and laughing with the animals. And he can run as fast as they can, and he can talk with them, and he brings them down to the watering places and helps them elude the traps. And then Gilgamesh has been having a series of dreams that his mother interprets to say, these are a dream about the fact that you're going to have something more important than anything else in the world. You're going to have a friend. And that friend, if you remember the dreams, there's the star that falls down that he can't pick up, and he bends over it as over a woman. There's the golden axe. And these are all images of the friend he's going to have. Mm-hmm. And then a hunter will go to his father and say, you know, there's this wild man keeping the animals out of my traps. What can I do? And the father says, go to Uruk and find Gilgamesh. He'll tell you what to do. So then he makes this journey, finds Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh listens to the story, recognizes that there's something special here, and tells him to go and get one of the temple prostitutes and to take her back out and have her reveal herself to the wild man. And so the hunter does this. There's a beautiful description of the temple prostitutes' procession across the desert, camping every night. And then she sits at the waters where she knows Enkidu will come down. And when he comes to the waters, he sees a woman for the first time. And as the poem says in its most erotic line, she touched her broad leather belt and threw her clothes all around. Mm-hmm. And Gilgamesh comes on her like a summer rainstorm. And then they make love for 6 nights and 7 days. And then when he's full of her beauty, he takes back off, only to discover he can no longer run with the animals. He's become human because of being with her. And then
there's a sadness around that, isn't
there? Of course. Huge. It's the loss of innocence, sure. It's as you were saying earlier, it's being kicked out of the garden. Yeah. So there's a civilization comes with an enormous scar. And he's very sad that he can no longer. But then, of course, he discovers cooked food. They give him beer, and after he drinks 7 barrels, he loves the way it feels. And as the poem says, his spirit dances inside his body like hot embers. Yeah. And so then he discovers that one of the young hunters is going back to the city of Uruk for a wedding, and that Gilgamesh is going to take the bride the night of the wedding. And this makes Enkidu angry. And so he waits to challenge Enkidu in the town at the wedding. And then they fight for the same amount of time as he made love with the girl. So they fight for 6 days and 7 nights, and there's descriptions of the city. And there's a beautiful description that is in the original that I love. They fight like raging bulls. And of course, the story is all about bulls. You know, there's.
I wonder if the title of the movie was taken.
No, it wasn't there yet, but I love the fact that when I was looking at that line, I could reach for the title of the movie, and it fit exactly, and it conformed to the words in the original. So they fight like raging bulls, which is very important because Gilgamesh's mother, Ninsun, is the wild cow of heaven. And he is a bull. This is a whole civilization, as is the Athenian Hellenistic civilization based on bulls and cows, the sacred white bull, beginning there. And so then after they fight, as so many guys have had the experience of you fight with some guy in the playground, and when you're done fighting, you realize you're best friends because you found your equal. And then as equals, they decide they need a great challenge. And so Gilgamesh decides that they will go and fight Huwawa, the wild man who lives up in the cedars of Lebanon. The biblical references are constant throughout here. And Enkidu is terrified that they're going to fight Huwawa. But again, this is the 2 civilized men are going to go and fight the ultimate sign of wildness. And beautiful scenes as they're arrayed. Enkidu is adopted by Gilgamesh's mother, and they'll march off across the desert. They'll come to the great wood, fight Huwawa. They'll be victorious over Huwawa. But when they leave, having been victorious over the bull of heaven, Gilgamesh is made to look particularly beautiful as he leaves the forest after the fight, and Ishtar sees him.
But she's got a bad track record, right?
She has a very bad track record with men. And Ishtar says, I want you in my bed now. And that's when Gilgamesh makes this...
Another bad woman, right?
Yes. Well, you can't say that Ishtar is bad. She's a goddess, so she's neither good nor bad. She's Ishtar. And we don't say anything at all about her.
I got the impression she was...
Don't say bad things about Ishtar or Athena. Things can go very wrong quickly.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So Ishtar is furious and goes to Daddy and says he told all the bad things I've done. Daddy says, well, it's all true. And at this point, Doug, I believe that we have the very first reference to zombies. And I've heard other zombie experts never mention this one. So she goes to her father and says, listen, if you don't give me the bull of heaven to attack those two, I'll go down into the underworld and I will open the gates of the underworld, and there are more dead than there are living, and they will be hungry. I think that's a pretty good zombie reference right there.
I never thought of that.
And so father says, oh dear, don't do that, you know, and are you ready for this? And he brings on the bull of heaven. And again, Gilgamesh and Enkidu are able to defeat the bull of heaven. And then Enkidu actually rips the thigh off and throws it at her.
And you know, all through this story, they're so aware of their mortality. I mean, we try to block it out, and you know,
well, I think the point of the story is that in a way,
they want to make, you know, Gilgamesh wants a name, his name to last forever.
Right, and so he doesn't understand why we die yet. And so the comparison that's often made is he's like a teenage boy who's too strong, too powerful, too sexual, and has no sense of his mortality. So now he's got his best friend. The two of them have had a great adventure. They fought the gods, but when Enkidu throws, it's too much, and the gods come together in assembly and says, one of them has to die. And at that point, Enkidu dies, and Gilgamesh sits with him for 7 days. And I just want to say, in every little section I'm talking about, I think the poetry, line by line, is
and you'll read from the work
so much
today. Yeah.
And so Enkidu dies, and Gilgamesh recognizes mortality and wants to know why we die. And so he decides to go to the only person, the only mortal who was allowed to live forever, who is called Utnapishtim, but we will know Utnapishtim as Noah. It's where the biblical Noah story comes from. And there's a lot of interesting scholarship on the parallels between the Noah story and Gilgamesh and the Noah story of the Bible. But Gilgamesh makes this journey, which again is a journey of going underground. So he goes into the underworld, he passes down under where the sun goes, emerges in the underworld, and has a series of adventures there. The main adventure being that Utnapishtim tells him the story of why the gods spared him. And the gods spared him because he could listen. He was quiet. Everybody else was
an ordinary guy.
Noisy.
And he was an
ordinary guy, but he was listening. So when the gods spoke through the pots and pans in his kitchen, he heard the news. And the news was, go build a boat. Make it 80 cubits long, 80 cubits wide, 9 decks, 7 quarters. Get all your neighbors to build it because it's going to rain. And then it starts to rain, and a line I love doing, I say, it rained so hard that the person sitting next to you turned to clay. That's how hard it rained. Wow. Which is right in the text.
It's a hard rain.
It's a hard rain. Gonna fall. And so then Gilgamesh is left thinking he couldn't pass the final test Utnapishtim gave him. And again, when we think of Le Petit Mort and we think of falling asleep as little deaths, you know, and so the challenge to the immortal is, can you stay awake? And Utnapishtim challenges Gilgamesh to stay awake, and Gilgamesh says, no problem, I can stay awake. And of course he immediately falls. Sleep comes on him like a summer storm. The poet loves that image.
Now how long did he actually sleep? I was a bit...
7 days.
He slept 7 days, okay.
And then the wife has made 7 loaves of bread.
To show him.
And isn't that just like the life of a man? Yeah. The first loaf of bread is hard and coarse and rocky and a bit moldy, and the newest loaf of bread is all soft and pink and yummy. The life of a man is let out in 7 loaves. Gilgamesh, deeply depressed, leaves, but the Utnapishtim's wife says there is that plant. And it's a plant that they call a plant that makes the old men young again. And so Gilgamesh is very proud of this plant, dives down under the water to get it. So by going underworld, he's twice born. Like, so Odysseus will be twice born as well. And the underwater, each of these heroic stories, the heroes have to do these huge swimming feats. It'll come back up in Beowulf, it's there in the Odyssey, and in this one, Gilgamesh has to swim for 3 days down, get this impossible plant, swim back up. And then he makes his way home with Utnapishtim, the ferryman. And just before he gets back to the city, he lies down by a well, and he's drinking from the water and looking at how bitter his face is, when King Snake, and that's what the poet calls as King Snake, slides up, eats the flower, and slides away. And so Snake gets to throw his skin every 7 years. We should have had that.
Right.
But Snake stole it from us.
Yeah.
Would have put oil of Olay on the business. You could have gone in a dark room and throw a skin. So then Gilgamesh says, oh, I've got nothing. And he comes back to the city and he looks at his city and he shows Utnapishtim the city and how beautiful it is. And we realize when we enter the city, he is now a soft man. He's a civilized man. He's going to be a proper shepherd to his people. He's going to look after his people because he's recognized his mortality. And in the end, what he has to, he thought he had nothing to leave, but in the end, what he has to leave is the story I just told you with his name, Gilgamesh. And so I feel that every time...
And it lasts 4,000 years, right?
4,000 years. So every time I finish the story to an audience and I say, because you now know his name, he was right. His name lives forever. Because now you're going to tell someone else about it, and so it goes on.
I already have.
But we missed, and so after when that civilization disappears, and we don't know why it vanishes under the sands and disappears. There are many theories for why that happens. But then those tablets will lie under the sand, for 3,500 years until some archaeologists, right after the First World War, dig them up. And then it slowly comes back to life from there.
I mean, they commonly dig up things, and people in Italy and all that digging, just taking out some shrubs, and this ancient artifact will come up.
No, and the Sumerologist I worked with on this, Torkild Jakobsen, and Torkild would tell me, he said there were thousands and thousands of unread tablets. So there may be another Gilgamesh in amongst all those tablets,
sure
but there are way more tablets than there are Sumerologists to read them.
And dreams play a big part. He says, they're constantly dreaming, and they go, they take dreams literally.
Yes.
Maybe you can just comment on that.
Well, the aspect that's so important in the story is water. Sweet water and bitter water. And so every night as they travel, Enkidu is responsible for digging a well, getting the sweet water, and making an offering. And then it's after that they go to sleep and they dream. And there's a beautiful piece where Gilgamesh dreams, and he wakes up at 2 in the morning and says to Enkidu, what happened? Did a god just walk through the camp? Was it an immortal? And it's because he's full of the magic of his dream. And then his dream will appear negative to him. But when he tells the 2 dreams about getting a friend, his mother takes the dream and turns it around and makes it positive. And before they go into Huwawa, and sometimes he's called Humbaba or Huwawa, depending, before they go into the wood, he has 3 dreams. And each of those dreams, Enkidu will turn around and interpret in a positive way.
Now, you have a love affair with the epics, and there's a lot of genres of literature that people love and everything. And you've been exposed to them, I imagine, in your career. So why is it the epics that you decided to concentrate on?
Well, I think my earliest interests intellectually were in the classics and anthropology. That's what I was fascinated by. And I wanted to study Homer and Haida at the same time. And so I was studying the Northwest Pacific Coast epic poets, if you like, culturally epic, and Homer at the same time. And I found myself drawn into that world, and I recognized in the indigenous storytelling world the only other literature I found that was as powerful and as concise as the Sumerians and the ancient Greeks. And it's that feeling that in those epic poems, the power is so extraordinary. I'll tell you a quick story of having to tell the Odyssey.
I want you some time to read from the text, but go ahead.
So I'm asked to read in, I think it was the Hudson Middle School.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very hard-bitten middle school, very,
Right.
impoverished, put in a gym with 1,200 kids, and all the teachers leave to go have a smoke in the playground
Right,
and talk
right.
about union.
Right.
And I'm standing there with all these kids in a circle about this big, and they're restless. And I start telling Homer in a loud
Right.
voice,
Mm-hmm.
and it's restless for about 5 minutes, and then boom, I feel the Homeric magic click in, and they're with me. And from then on, you're off. And I can't think of another piece of
Well,
literature
I mean, but
except
also,
Shakespeare that could
I think
do
it's,
that.
you could, and same with poetry. I mean, the way you read is very dramatic, and you have a dramatic presence as well. So I'm sure that also is very important.
It helps enormously, and
Yeah.
it's a big part of it that I want to be as physical in my voice because I am attempting to put my audience into a trance.
Yeah.
And so the richer my voice is and the more rhythmic it is, the quicker they're going to go.
Now, did you
into story
cultivate that
trance.
voice, or did you born
It's
with it?
really, I think I was born with it. I was born with it. I grew up with European parents, and I was in English boarding schools by the age of 9. And so, but it's a sound rather than an accent, and it's a very deep sound deep in my chest, and I can make that sound as big and as open as I can. And for doing the Odyssey, for doing the epics, there are many sections where I want to take the audience's head off by using every bit of power I have in that, and I know when I'm storytelling well because I'm sweating and exhausted by the end. So it's a very physical act telling these stories.
Well, the proof is in the pudding, isn't it? So why don't you read from...
Is that the beginning? I should be able to.
Well, whatever
do it.
you want to read from.
Sure.
We have about 10 minutes for you to read, so.
Okay, I'll just start from the beginning then. Gilgamesh, king of kings, he who saw the source, who knew all of the land, he who saw the secrets and revealed the hidden things. It was Gilgamesh who brought back knowledge from before the flood. He went on a long journey. He was heartbroken, face frozen, worn out, exhausted, and he returned and wrote his story in stone. It was Gilgamesh who built the walls of Uruk. He built Eanna's temple, home to Ishtar. He built the sacred storehouse and the sacred sheepfold. Look at the outer walls, how they blaze like copper in the sun. Look at the inner wall, perfect. Hold the ancient threshold. Come before Eanna, home to Ishtar. There is no equal. Climb those long stairs to the terraces and look about. See how it is. 1 part orchard, 1 part field, 1 part city. Did not 7 wise men lay this foundation? This Gilgamesh, he is 1 part man, 2 parts God. He has the body of a god. He is the mightiest of warriors. He uses up the young men of Uruk. No one can compete with him. No son is left safe with father. No daughter of a warrior left safe with father. No wife of a noble left safe. And this is our shepherd? The people of Uruk called out to the gods. The people of Uruk called out to Aruru. You brought this mad wild ox into being. Make another to compete with him. Let them compete with each other so that Uruk may rest. When Aruru heard this, she had the image of Anu in her heart. Aruru took clay in her hand. She spat into the clay and threw it out into the grasslands. So Enkidu was born. Enkidu's whole body is covered with flowing long hair. It's flowing hair like a woman's. His hair is like cornrows glittering in the sun. He knows nothing of people, nothing of the land. He is naked as the green god Sumukwam. He runs with the gazelles. He eats grasses with the gazelles. He brings the wild animals sweet water, so they may laugh together and drink deeply. One day, at the oasis, Enkidu was there. A hunter came and saw the wild man. The hunter's face was frozen with fear. He journeyed home to his father. He looked like one who had been on a long journey. His father said, "Oh, my son, what's wrong with you?" And he said, "Father, I saw a wild man by the waters, a wild man with flowing long hair, a wild man who was running with the wild ones, running with the animals, bringing them to sweet water. Father, he keeps the animals from my traps. He fills in the pits I dig for the lions. Because of this wild man, I can no longer hunt the wild animals. I can no longer be a hunter. Father. His father said, My son, in Uruk you will find Gilgamesh. No one can compete with him. He is as strong as a god. So go you to Uruk. Tell Gilgamesh how strong this one is. He will give you one of the courtesans of Ishtar from Eanna's temple. Take her with you. She will use her strength to win the wild man. She will use her woman's strength to win him. And when he comes to the sweet waters, she will show him the beauty of her naked body. He will lie with her. And then the animals, the wild ones, will no longer run with him.
Go. Keep going. Yeah.
The hunter listened to his father. He went to Gilgamesh in Uruk, and he said to Gilgamesh, There is a man like no other. He is the strongest on the grasslands. He runs over the grasslands. He runs with the wild ones. He runs with the gazelles. He eats the grasses with the gazelles. He takes the wild ones to sweet water, so they may drink. He strikes terror in my heart. He fills in my pits. He opens my traps, and I can no longer hunt. Gilgamesh said to the hunter, Go take a courtesan of Ishtar with you. Have her show the wild man her beauty. He will come to her and will no longer run with the animals. So the hunter went to the temple where he found the courtesan. They set out on their journey. On the third day they came to the well, the sweet water where the wild man brings the animals to drink. They waited. Then the animals came laughing. The animals came bounding to the water, and with them was Enkidu, the one who was born in the wild, the one who runs with the gazelles, the one who feeds on the grasses with the gazelles. She saw him there, like the first man from the heart of the grasslands. Now, said the hunter, show yourself, don't hold back. Take his breath away. Use your strength, the woman's way. Overpower him with your beauty. Take his breath away. Take his heart away. She undid her broad belt. She flung her clothes about. Enkidu saw her. He came at her like a sudden rainstorm. For 6 nights and 7 days, she made him know what a woman is. At last, full of her beauty, he looked for the wild animals. Seeing him, the gazelles flew away. The wild ones ran from him. Enkidu tried to run with them, but his body would not run. His knees were weak. The animals ran away from him. He could no longer run as fast as before, but he knew, he understood. So he went back and sat at the feet of the courtesan. He looked at her, he listened to her, and she said, "How, Enkidu, you are like a god in strength and wisdom. Why run with the wild ones? I will take you to the great city of Uruk, where the temple of Anu is, home to Ishtar,